Elias had always lived a quiet life on the edge of the valley, far away from the noise of towns and the rush of people. His farm was small, with a wooden house, a few animals, and long fields of crops that stretched toward the tree line. Most days were the same for him. He woke up before sunrise, fed his animals, worked in the fields, and returned home when the sky turned orange. He talked very little, even with people in town. He was known as the shy farmer who preferred the company of land and silence rather than long conversations. One morning, after a long night of heavy rain and strong winds, Elias walked out to inspect the damage on his farm. Fallen branches covered the ground, and the soil near the fields looked soaked and uneven. As he walked along the fence, he suddenly stopped. The soft earth held a deep mark, something like a footprint. But the size shocked him. It was much larger than his own foot, almost twice the length. At first, he blinked, thinking his eyes were tricking him, but when he knelt to check more closely, he found another footprint beside it, just as large. He stood up slowly and looked toward the trees. The forest stood silent, still dripping water from the storm. The wind moved gently, but no animal or person came into view. Elias wasn't a man who imagined strange things, yet this discovery stayed in his mind the entire day. He told himself the prints might belong to a traveler passing through, or someone wearing big shoes, but deep inside he knew they were unusual. He continued fixing his fences and clearing fallen twigs, but his eyes kept drifting toward the tree line. There was a feeling, a quiet sense that someone had been nearby, someone watching or walking around his land. Still, he continued working. Life on a farm didn't pause for mysteries. Later that afternoon, when the sun had started setting behind the hills, Elias was carrying a bundle of wood to his storage shed. The air was peaceful again after the storm, and birds were returning to the valley, filling it with soft chirping. As he turned toward the shed, he suddenly felt that same strange awareness again. The hair on his arms lifted slightly, like he was not alone. He looked up. There, standing near the edge of the forest, was a woman, tall, still, and quietly observing him. Elias froze. The woman was unlike anyone he had ever seen. She was much taller than any person he had met, with broad shoulders and strong arms that suggested years of outdoor life. Her long, dark hair rested behind her back in a thick braid. Her clothes were simple and worn, made for long journeys, and she carried no bags or tools. But her expression was calm, not threatening. She didn't step forward or raise her voice. She simply watched him with curious eyes, as if deciding whether or not to approach. Elias felt his heart jump, not in fear but in pure surprise. For weeks, perhaps months, he had spoken only to his animals. Seeing a stranger on his land, especially one so striking and unusual, made his throat tighten. He placed the firewood down carefully, not wanting to appear startled. He wiped his hands on his trousers and cleared his throat, though no words came out yet. After a moment, the woman stepped forward. Her movements were slow and respectful, as if she didn't want to alarm him. When she came close enough for him to see her clearly, she spoke in a soft but steady voice. "My name is Taya," she said. Her voice carried a warm, grounded tone that seemed to match her strong presence. Elias gave a small nod, still unsure what to say. "I didn't mean to frighten you," she added gently. "I've been living in the highlands for a while. I came down because I needed help, but I didn't want to go into town." Elias finally found his voice. "Help?" he asked quietly. Taya nodded. "Yes. I've been alone for many months. I didn't see people often, and I didn't want to be judged or stared at. So I stayed in the mountains, but the storm last night damaged my shelter, and I needed to find water and a safe place to rest. Your valley was the closest place." Her honesty surprised Elias. There was no hesitation in her words, no attempt to hide her situation. She spoke like someone who had learned to rely on herself for a long time. Elias felt a small wave of respect for her even before he fully understood her story. He nodded again, this time with confidence. "You can drink from the well," he said quietly. "And, if you need to rest, there's space near the barn. It's sheltered." Taya smiled, a gentle smile that softened her strong features. "Thank you," she said. "You're kind." Elias felt his cheeks warm slightly. He wasn't used to compliments. He wasn't even used to conversations longer than a few words. Still, he pointed toward the well and walked with her so she could fill a cup with water. As she drank, he noticed how tired she looked, not weak, but worn out from days of traveling. Her hands had small marks from rough weather, and her clothes carried dust from mountain paths. After she finished drinking, she stood for a moment, taking in the peaceful valley. "It's quiet here," she said softly. "Quieter than anywhere I've been in a long time." Elias nodded. "I like quiet," he admitted. "I can see that," she replied with a small laugh. Her laugh wasn't loud. It was warm, like she was remembering something pleasant. Elias found himself relaxing just a bit. He wasn't a man who opened up easily. But her presence didn't feel heavy or intrusive. It felt natural. He guided her to the sheltered space near the barn, a small area with dry ground and a roof that protected it from rain. She set her things down, which wasn't much. Just a cloth bag and a piece of folded fabric. Elias noticed she didn't carry the kind of belongings most travelers had. It made him wonder what she had gone through in the mountains. But he didn't ask. He didn't want to seem impolite. As she arranged her small space, Taya suddenly looked at him and said, "You don't have to stay here if you're busy. I won't cause trouble." "I know," Elias said simply, "but if you need anything, I'm nearby." She gave that gentle smile again. It's been a long time since anyone said that to me. Elias felt a quiet ache in his chest at those words. He didn't know why, but something about her loneliness reminded him of his own. He had lived alone for years, by choice. But sometimes, silence could grow too large. Seeing someone else who understood that feeling, even in a different way, touched him more than he expected. As the evening light faded, Elias went back to his small kitchen to prepare his meal. But he kept glancing out the window, checking to see if Taya was still there. She sat calmly near the barn, watching the sky change colors. She looked peaceful, almost like she belonged there. Before night fully arrived, Elias walked outside again with a lantern. He approached her with slow steps, careful not to startle her. "Do you need anything else?" he asked. Taya shook her head. "Just rest," she said. "The mountains have been cold at night. This place feels warm." "Haya." He nodded, feeling strangely relieved. He wanted her to feel safe here. Taya looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "No man has been near me in months. I forgot how to speak to people for a while." She smiled lightly. "Thank you for not turning me away." Elias's heart moved again with quiet sympathy. "You're welcome here," he said in his simple, sincere voice. As he returned to his home, he realized something unusual. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't uneasy, and he wasn't regretting letting a stranger stay near his farm. Instead, he felt something new, something warm. For the first time in a long while, the valley didn't feel empty. It felt alive. And even though he didn't know it then, this simple act of kindness would become the beginning of something neither he nor Taya could have imagined. The next morning, Elias woke up earlier than usual. He wasn't sure if it was the soft morning light, the sound of birds, or simply the thought that someone else was nearby after such a long time. For years, he had followed the same routine without much change, but today felt different. He washed his face, put on his work clothes, and stepped outside, feeling a strange sense of anticipation in his chest. When he walked toward the barn, he saw Taya standing near the fence. She had woken even earlier than him. The sky was still painted with soft colors of dawn, and thin layers of mist floated over the fields. Taya was watching the sunrise with a calm expression, her long braid hanging over her shoulder. When she heard his footsteps, she turned and smiled gently. "You start your work early," she said. Elias nodded. "Farm doesn't wait," he replied in his quiet way. Taya stepped closer. "If you don't mind, I'd like to help today." Her offer surprised Elias. He was used to doing everything alone. He never expected someone he had just met especially someone who had been living through difficult times, to offer help. He opened his mouth to refuse politely, not wanting her to feel obligated. But before he could say anything, Taya added, "I feel better when I keep my hands busy, and I want to give something back for your kindness." Her tone was gentle but sincere. Elias was shy, but he wasn't ungrateful. So he nodded slowly. "If you want to help, you can," he said. "There's a lot of work after the storm." Taya's smile widened just a little. "Good. Show me what to do." They walked together to the main field, where branches and pieces of wood still lay scattered from the storm. Elias picked up a large branch to clear it. But before he could lift it fully, Taya stepped forward and lifted it with ease. She carried it away as if it weighed almost nothing. Elias blinked, surprised. He had known she was strong just by looking at her, but seeing her handle the heavy branch so effortlessly made him realize just how much strength she carried. She returned for another piece, and another, moving quickly but carefully. "You're very strong," he said quietly. Taya laughed softly. "The mountains train you. When you live alone out there, you learn to do everything yourself." There was no pride or arrogance in her voice, just a simple truth. Elias felt admiration rising inside him, mixed with a growing curiosity about her life in the highlands. For the next few hours, they worked side by side. Elias showed her the tasks he usually did: tightening the fence posts, clearing fallen leaves, checking the soil. Taya followed his instructions carefully, but many times she did things her own way, faster, smoother, and with surprising skill. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew the land well, someone who understood nature beyond what most people did. At one point, as she lifted a heavy wooden beam that Elias had been pushing with great effort, she glanced at him with a hint of humor. "You work too hard alone," she said. Elias looked down shyly. "I'm used to it. You don't have to be," she replied gently. Her words stayed in his mind long after she said them. By midday, they took a break under the shade of an old tree. Elias brought fresh water from the well and a simple lunch: bread, boiled eggs, and apples. It wasn't much, but Taya accepted it with gratitude. She ate quietly at first, then began sharing small moments from her past. She told him about her childhood growing up among the Apache people, learning the traditions, learning the land, and learning to move freely in nature. She described how she used to run through the forest trails without shoes, how she learned to track animals by the smallest signs, and how her grandfather taught her the names of every plant and bird. Elias listened with deep interest. He had never heard stories like these. His own life had been plain and simple, without distant journeys or unique traditions. The way Taya spoke made him imagine a world far different from his quiet valley, a world filled with mountains, wide skies, and the knowledge of old generations. After a moment of silence, Taya looked at the field stretching ahead and said softly, "I left my community a while ago. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed time alone. I had people I loved who passed away, and it changed everything inside me. I didn't want to talk. I didn't want to be around others. So I went to the highlands." Her voice didn't carry sadness in an overwhelming way, but it held a quiet truth. Elias nodded, feeling deep empathy. He wasn't someone who shared easily, but something in her honesty made it feel safe. "I understand," he said. "Sometimes being alone feels easier." "Yes," she agreed. "But too much loneliness can make the world feel heavy." Elias looked down at the ground. He knew that feeling better than anyone. As the afternoon continued, Taya helped him repair the broken fence. She held the wooden posts steady, while Elias hammered them into place. The rhythm of the work, the steady tapping of the hammer, and the peaceful wind made the task surprisingly pleasant. For the first time in years, Elias didn't feel the usual tiredness that came from doing everything alone. Instead, he felt a quiet, warm energy beside him. At one point, while they carried a stack of wood together, Taya said with a soft smile, "I don't know how people would react if they saw me here. Many stare at me because of my size." Elias glanced at her. "I didn't stare," he said honestly. She chuckled lightly. "I know. That's why I feel comfortable here." Her words warmed his heart. He wasn't used to hearing that he made someone comfortable. Most people in town noticed his shyness and didn't try to know him deeper. But Taya saw him differently, and that simple recognition felt special. Later in the day, as they carried tools back to the shed, Taya suddenly paused. The sunlight glowed over the fields, casting a soft golden color over everything. She looked around slowly, taking in the peaceful view. "This valley is beautiful," she said. "I can see why you chose to live here." Elias nodded. "It's simple, it's quiet, and safe," she added gently. He didn't answer, but he felt her words settle inside him like warm sunlight. When evening came, Taya helped feed the animals. The goats were curious about her, and one even nudged her gently. She laughed and patted its head, making Elias smile quietly. He hadn't seen anyone interact with his animals like that in a long time. After the chores were done, they both sat near the barn again. Just like the night before. The sky turned orange, then pink, and finally dark blue. Crickets began singing in the grass, and a soft breeze passed through the valley. Taya stretched her arms and sighed contentedly. "Today was good," she said. It felt nice to work beside someone. Elias lowered his eyes, feeling shy. "I'm glad you helped." She looked at him with kind eyes. "Elias, I meant what I said earlier. No man has been near me in months. Not as a friend, not as a companion, not even as someone passing by. I closed myself off from the world. I forgot how it felt to be welcomed." Elias's heart softened at her words. He could hear the sincerity in her voice. "You're welcome here," he said again. But this time the words carried deeper meaning. It wasn't just politeness, it was truth. Taya gently nodded. "I believe you." They sat quietly for a while, simply enjoying the peaceful night. There was no need for long conversations or forced words. Their silence wasn't empty. It was calm, shared, and warm. As Elias stood up to return to his house, Taya spoke softly behind him. "Thank you for today." He turned back. "Thank you for helping." Their eyes met for a brief moment. It was a simple exchange, but something inside both of them shifted just a little. Just enough to feel it. Elias walked back to his house with a lighter heart than he had felt in years, and Taya settled into a resting place near the barn, feeling a sense of safety she hadn't felt since long before she left her community. Neither of them said it out loud, but both knew. This was the beginning of a bond that would continue to grow quietly, naturally, and beautifully. The days that followed were calm and gentle, almost like the valley itself was welcoming Taya. Each morning, she and Elias worked together on different tasks around the farm. Some days they fixed old fences, some days they planted new seeds, and other days they simply walked through the fields to check the soil. Working side by side became a natural routine for both of them, as if they had been doing it for years. But even with this peaceful rhythm, there were moments when Taya grew quiet and thoughtful, especially when she looked toward the distant road that led to town. Elias noticed this many times, though he didn't ask her about it. He respected her silence the same way she respected his. One afternoon, while they were repairing a storage shed, the sound of wagon wheels suddenly echoed from the main road. Elias looked up with mild curiosity. He rarely received visitors, and the road usually stayed empty except for travelers passing through. Taya, however, instantly tensed. Her shoulders stiffened, and she glanced around, searching for a place to step aside. Elias saw the worry in her eyes. "You can stay here," Elias said quietly. "It's probably just travelers." Taya nodded but didn't look fully convinced. A few minutes later, a group of 3 travelers walked past the edge of the farm, leading their wagon. They were talking loudly among themselves, laughing and pointing at different parts of the valley. One of them noticed movement near the barn and gestured toward Taya and Elias. "Hey, someone's here," the traveler called out. Elias waved politely, but Taya stepped back slightly, not wanting to draw attention. She wasn't afraid, but she had experienced too many curious stares in the past. People often reacted to her size with surprise, or even discomfort. She had grown used to it over time, but it didn't make it easier. The travelers walked closer, not in a rude way, but out of curiosity. As soon as they saw Taya, their expressions changed from friendly interest to sudden shock. Not fear, just surprise. "Wow," one of them whispered, not trying to be quiet. "She's tall. Really tall." Taya lowered her eyes, staying silent. Elias felt something tighten inside him. He didn't like the way they were staring at her, as if she were something unusual, instead of a person trying to live peacefully. One of the travelers stepped forward. "Are you both from around here?" he asked Elias, but his eyes stayed fixed on Taya. Elias nodded politely, keeping his voice calm. "This is my farm. She's helping me with some work." The traveler blinked. "Oh, I see. We just didn't expect to see someone like her here." Taya said nothing, but her jaw tightened slightly. She had heard similar comments many times in her life, and each time, it reminded her of why she preferred the quiet spaces, the mountains, the forests, the valleys where no one judged her. Elias gave a small, firm nod. "She's a guest here," he said, "and she's welcome." The tone of his voice was different, gentle but strong. Even Taya noticed it. The travelers looked at Elias for a moment, then seemed to realize their comments were unnecessary. They apologized lightly, wished him a good day, and continued down the road, pulling their wagon behind them. As their footsteps faded, Taya let out a slow breath she had been holding in. She didn't look upset. She looked more resigned, like someone who expected the world to react this way. Elias stepped closer. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. Taya forced a small smile. "I'm fine. I'm used to it." Elias shook his head slowly. "You shouldn't have to get used to it." Taya looked at him with warm but tired eyes. The world is full of people who notice what is different before they notice what is human. Elias didn't have an answer for that. Her words were true, but he wished they weren't. Later that evening, after finishing the day's work, Taya sat under the old oak tree near the fields. The leaves rustled softly overhead as she watched the sky change colors. Elias brought 2 cups of warm tea and placed one beside her. "You didn't say much after the travelers left," he said gently. Taya wrapped her hands around the cup. "I didn't want to make you uncomfortable," she replied. "You don't make me uncomfortable," Elias said calmly. "Not at all." She looked at him with quiet appreciation. "I know. That's why I feel safe here." The word safe struck something deep inside Elias. He wasn't used to being described that way. Most people barely talked to him long enough to know if he was kind or not. Hearing Taya say it made him feel seen in a way he hadn't felt before. But Taya's expression grew serious. "I don't want to cause trouble for you," she said softly. "If more people see me here, they might start asking questions. Some may not understand." Elias shook his head. "You've done nothing wrong." "I know," she said. "But people sometimes react to what they don't understand." Elias studied her face. She looked strong, but there was a layer of sadness behind her calm expression. And he suddenly realized something. Taya was not afraid of people. She was tired of being misunderstood by them. "You can stay here for as long as you want," Elias said in his gentle but firm voice. "I mean that." Taya looked at him, and for a moment her eyes softened like warm light breaking through a cloudy sky. "You're a good man, Elias." He lowered his gaze shyly. Compliments always made him nervous, but hearing them from her made his heart feel steadier. Like her words anchored something inside him. Over the next few days, the rumor of a giant woman at the valley began to travel through the nearby town. People who had seen the travelers started whispering about what they had heard. This was a small community, and news spread quickly, even when it was exaggerated. One morning, 2 townspeople came to Elias's farm. They weren't rude, but they were curious, too curious. They asked questions about who Taya was, why she was there, and how long she planned to stay. Their tone wasn't unfriendly, but their eyes held the same mixture of confusion and fascination. Elias stood firm. "She is helping me on the farm," he said calmly. "She's a guest, and she is not a problem." The townspeople exchanged glances. One asked, "Is she dangerous?" "No," Elias answered immediately, his voice steady. "She's kind. She's helping more than anyone has helped me in years." Taya stood quietly in the background, listening to everything. She didn't interfere. She didn't argue. She simply watched as Elias defended her with quiet strength. When the townspeople finally left, Taya walked closer, her expression full of emotion. "You didn't have to stand up for me," she said softly. "Yes, I did," Elias replied in his gentle but sure tone. "Because it's the truth." Taya looked at him for a long moment. "I've met many people in my life, but very few who stand beside me, without judging me first." Elias felt warmth rise in his chest. "I see you for who you are," he said. "Not for what others notice first." Those simple words touched her deeply. It had been a long time since anyone spoke to her in such a genuine way. That evening, they sat under the oak tree again. The sky was full of soft stars, and the cool air carried the comforting scent of grass. Taya shared stories she had never told anyone outside her community, stories of her family, her struggles, and how loneliness became both a companion and a burden. Elias listened with quiet patience, offering small replies that showed he understood. Then she looked at him with a calm, honest expression. "You remind me that there is still kindness in the world," she said. "I had forgotten." Elias felt a soft ache in his heart, not sadness, but something close to gratitude. "You remind me too," he said quietly. Their connection deepened that night not through big words or grand actions, but through simple understanding and trust. Two quiet souls, both carrying their own wounds, had found comfort in each other without even trying. And as the stars shone softly above them, both felt something new growing between them, a gentle bond, warm and steady, like the light of the valley itself. In the weeks that followed, the valley settled into a peaceful rhythm that felt almost magical. Every morning, Elias opened his door with the soft comfort of knowing Taya was nearby, helping with tasks that once felt overwhelming. Every evening, Taya sat quietly under the old oak tree, watching the sky change colors, while Elias prepared simple meals they sometimes shared. Their lives blended naturally, without forcing anything, and each day brought them closer, in small, quiet ways. Even though the travelers' rumors had reached the town, people eventually lost interest. They had their own lives to focus on, and Elias's farm was far enough from the busy road that visitors stayed rare. This gave Taya the space she needed to breathe again, and Elias the freedom to enjoy her presence without worry. But even with the calm around them, both of them knew that a decision was coming, especially Taya. One late afternoon, when the sun was low and warm, she stood on a small hill overlooking the valley. Elias walked up the path to find her. She stood tall and still, the breeze brushing through her long braid. For a moment, Elias simply watched her, noticing how comfortable she had become in the valley and how peaceful she looked. He quietly stepped beside her. "You're thinking about something," he said gently. Taya nodded. "I've been thinking for many days." Elias waited patiently. He never pushed her to speak before she was ready. "Finally," she said, "before I came here, I thought I would return to my community after I had rested. I thought I only needed a few days to gather myself, and then continue my journey." Elias felt something inside him tighten, not painfully, but with worry. Taya turned to look at him. "But my time here changed me," she continued softly. "It reminded me of things I had forgotten. Peace, safety, kindness, simple moments." Elias lowered his gaze. "I'm glad you found those here," he said. Taya took a slow breath. "The question now is whether I should go back or begin something new." Elias didn't know what to say. His heart wanted her to stay, but he didn't want to influence her decision unfairly, so he simply nodded. "Whatever you choose," he said quietly, "I'll support it." Taya watched him carefully, reading the calm expression on his face. But beneath that calmness, she sensed a hint of something deeper, something Elias rarely showed. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, a simple gesture of comfort. "You've given me more than rest, Elias. You've given me a safe place to heal." He looked up, his shy eyes meeting hers with honesty. "And you've given me company," he said softly. "I didn't realize how much I missed that." The wind moved between them, carrying the gentle sounds of the valley. It felt like the land itself was listening. Taya stepped a little closer. "I don't want to make a choice based on fear," she said. "I want to choose what feels right." Elias nodded. "Then listen to your heart," he whispered. Taya smiled gently. "I am." That evening, after finishing the farm chores, they sat under the oak tree again. The stars shimmered above them like tiny lanterns. Elias handed her a cup of warm tea, and they enjoyed the calm night breeze. Taya eventually spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I want to stay a little longer," she said. "Maybe not just for rest. Maybe for a new beginning." Elias slowly exhaled, relief flowing through him like warm air. He didn't hide his reaction this time. He let himself smile, shy, gentle, and full of quiet happiness. "I'm glad," he said. The next day, Taya began helping Elias with bigger tasks, clearing an unused part of the land, preparing new spaces for planting, and even discussing how the farm could grow over time. She had learned many things in the mountains: how plants survive in tough conditions, how soil changes through the seasons, and how to read the signs of weather long before a storm arrives. Her knowledge surprised Elias, and he admired her even more. "You know more about the land than anyone I've met," he told her one morning. Taya laughed softly. "The mountains teach you if you pay attention. Nature always speaks, you just have to listen." Elias nodded, inspired by her words. Together, they planted a new section of crops. Elias explained his way of planting, and Taya offered suggestions for improving the soil. They worked in a comfortable silence, occasionally sharing small stories or laughing quietly at simple things like a goat trying to nibble on Elias's shirt, or a bird that kept returning to the same fence post, no matter how many times it was scared away. Their days became a balance of work, rest, and gentle conversation. Sometimes, Taya told him more about her childhood, her mother's cooking, her grandfather's lessons, the old stories passed down through her people. Elias listened as if each story was precious. He had never heard such rich tales before, and they opened a new world inside him. In return, Elias shared small moments from his life: how he started the farm, how he learned to grow crops, how he spent years thinking he was fine living alone until he realized how quiet his life had become. Taya listened with the same respect he gave her stories. One afternoon, they were sitting on the fence near the field when Taya suddenly asked, "Elias, why did you choose to live alone?" He looked down, thinking carefully. "I didn't plan it," he said slowly. "I just kept working. And time passed. People in town never talked much to me. I guess I got used to silence." Taya nodded. "Silence can be peaceful, but too much silence becomes heavy." Elias looked at her. "It doesn't feel heavy now," he said quietly. Taya held his gaze, her eyes gentle and warm. "It doesn't feel heavy for me either." Their connection deepened in that moment, not through dramatic words, but through simple truth. As the days passed, Taya began to feel lighter. She walked with more confidence. She smiled more often. She even hummed soft melodies she remembered from her childhood. Elias noticed all of it, and each small change made him feel grateful. One evening, while watching the sunset, Elias gathered the courage to speak from his heart. "Taya," he began softly, "you said you wanted to build a new beginning." She turned to him, attentive. "If you want, you can build it here," he said. "With me." There was no pressure in his voice, no demands, just a sincere offer, spoken with quiet hope. Taya's eyes softened. "I know," she said gently. She looked toward the valley, then back at him. "This place healed me. And you made me feel seen. Not as someone unusual. Not as someone to be stared at. Just as a person." Elias's heart filled with warmth. "You are a person," he said softly. "A strong, kind one." She reached for his hand, a simple gesture full of trust. Elias didn't pull away. Instead, he let their hands rest together, warm and steady. "I want to stay," Taya said. "Not just for a while. For as long as life allows." Elias's eyes shined with quiet joy. "Then stay," he whispered. From that day onward, they worked together not just as two people sharing tasks, but as partners building a shared life. Taya taught Elias new ways to understand the land. Elias taught Taya how to live with gentleness rather than constant survival. They created routines together, shared laughter, and found comfort in each other's presence. In the evenings, they still sat under the oak tree. But now, their silence felt fuller, richer, warmer. Sometimes they talked about the future, about planting more crops, about building a small extra room near the barn for tools and storage. Other times, they simply watched the stars and let the peace of the valley wrap around them. They both knew their pasts had shaped them, but it was their present that mattered now. And their future, whatever it held, would be something they faced together. The valley, once quiet and lonely, became a place of companionship and gentle hope. And under the wide sky, Elias and Taya began a new chapter of life. Not with loud promises or dramatic declarations, but with simple kindness, shared work, and the steady warmth of two hearts healing side by side. Their story didn't end with a farewell or a sudden change. It continued with each sunrise, each shared meal, each moment of trust, two souls who found peace in each other's presence, creating a life that was quiet, steady, and beautiful.